All right, so it was only 2 days ago that I told you guys that it was a potential that at any moment the Supreme Court could strike down that eviction moratorium that Biden had put in place, basically in an effort to give us enough time to dole out some of the almost $50 billion that was supposed to be going out to a lot of renters and landlords that has not been going out nearly at a quick enough pace. And so now we're in a situation where the Supreme Court has officially struck down this eviction moratorium, potentially putting millions of people at risk of being evicted in the middle of a massive pandemic surge. So I want to read to you some of the details here and then talk about what, if anything, can possibly be done about this. So Congress must act, says Cori Bush, as Supreme Court ends eviction moratorium. Quote, "We didn't sleep on those steps just to give up now," said the Missouri Democrat. Obviously, in my previous video, I also talked about Cori Bush's efforts, and they were noble efforts. Granted, they were significantly too late. Obviously, Congress should have been doing something well before the eviction moratorium was set to expire. They should have been getting together and figuring out a plan to extend it through Congress so that it wasn't on Biden at the last minute to try to throw something in place that was going to get struck down by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court a month earlier had told them basically, we're not going to let you extend this eviction moratorium through executive order. You got to do it through Congress. So there was a giant missed opportunity there, but nonetheless, Cori Bush was pretty much the only person in Congress who seemed to give a shit enough to do anything about it. And so there was a temporary reprieve where the evictions were paused again. And now they didn't use that opportunity to actually give out any of the rental relief. And now we're basically in the same situation that we were a month ago. Again, I covered that story the other day, where they have still not doled out upwards of 89% of the rental relief that was supposed to be going to people. So here are some of the details. Millions of people across the U.S. Again, here from Jake Johnson of Common Dreams, fantastic reporter. And he says millions of people across the U.S. are once again at imminent risk of losing their homes after the conservative-dominated Supreme Court on Thursday struck down the Biden administration's eviction moratorium, siding with a coalition of landlords and real estate companies that challenge the critical lifeline. And again, one of the major problems with why the rental assistance has not been going out to people is because of landlords and politicians in these state and local governments that serve the interests of landlords. We covered countless people, landlords who are basically coming out and saying, I would rather just evict my current tenants and try to replace them with people who could have a better ability to pay than actually give them this rental relief, even though it will be going straight back into my pockets. I would still rather, they're doing the cost benefit analysis in their own heads and saying, well, it might be more profitable for me to just throw these people out on the streets. So landlords are to some degree largely to blame for the rental relief not being able to give out. But in addition to that, you also got to blame the initial way that the federal government structured this entire rental relief program. You should have just had a program where renters themselves don't have to go through landlords. They don't have to go through complicated means testing programs. They can just directly apply for relief and you get it to them as quickly as possible. But that's not how they chose to do it. They chose to complicate it. And so in an unsigned opinion, the 6-3 conservative majority ruled that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention does not have the authority to implement the eviction moratorium, the latest version of which was put in place earlier this month in response to pressure from Cori Bush and other lawmakers. And writing for the 3 dissenting liberal justices, Stephen Breyer, who should be retiring right now so he can be replaced and we don't have another Ruth Bader Ginsburg situation, but he slammed the high court's conservatives for rushing their massively consequential decision on the eviction ban without a full briefing and argument. And the moratorium on evictions for non-payment of rent was originally intended to run through October 3rd. And he says, quote, "The public interest strongly favors respecting the CDC's judgment at this moment when over 90% of counties are experiencing high coronavirus transmission rates," Breyer wrote, noting that the Real Estate Coalition's earlier argument against the eviction moratorium, that COVID-19 infections were trending downwards, no longer holds. And he's 100% right about this. I mean, this in June was when they were discussing the last time about this eviction moratorium. So we were at a lowering of the COVID transmission rates or the COVID case rates at that time. But now we're all the way back up to here. And sorry, this is just Georgia, but the same applies on the bigger scale. This is where we were when they made that original decision. And this is where we're at now. So it's significantly escalated. We're in an entirely different situation. And yeah, of course, the CDC should have the authority to do this because it inevitably is going to lead to the further transmission of COVID, and we know that in the data. So neighborhoods with the highest eviction filing rates have the lowest levels of COVID-19 vaccination. So in other words, the people who are most likely to be getting evicted because of this decision by the Supreme Court are also the most likely to then go out and be exposed by COVID and end up in the ICUs or the hospitals because they are unvaccinated, because they are the most poor and vulnerable people in the United States who also happen to have the lowest vaccination rates. So this is a situation that the Supreme Court has allowed to unfold. It's absolutely disgusting. And so they continue here. The High Court's ruling came just after a day after the U.S. Treasury Department released figures showing that 89%, again, of rental assistance funds approved by Congress have yet to be distributed, a problem that some critics have attributed to the faulty design of the federal aid program. And housing experts and advocates estimate that the total rental debt in the U.S. currently amounts to around $21 billion, with households that are behind on rent owing $3,300 on average. So they approved $46 billion to solve this problem. The problem is at $21 billion in scale. So what the fuck is going on here? I mean, you literally gave the money necessary to solve the problem. You allocated it in those previous relief bills, and these state and local governments are just not giving it out to people. Okay, that's the situation that we have right now. They're unnecessarily means testing it. They're clogging up the system to where people have to wait months and months and months to potentially even maybe get rejected from getting relief. So nobody's getting the relief money that we literally allocated to solve this problem. So it's completely ridiculous that we're in this situation. It's not even like, we didn't have the money to fix the problem. It's not being given to the people. And again, it's because of this ridiculous mindset, this neoliberal mindset of over means testing every single program. We should have just been giving people monthly checks this entire time, and you never would have even had to create some sort of complicated rental relief program. You could have just been sending people $2,000 a month throughout the entire duration of the pandemic, as many other countries were doing, or something close to that. And that would have actually had a better impact in solving the problem. Again, only 11% of that $46.5 billion has been given out. 11%? It's been months. I mean, it's a abysmal failure that's going to lead to thousands and thousands of people being evicted unnecessarily because of the failure of the federal government. It's nobody else to blame but the federal government and the congressional members that failed to get an eviction moratorium extended and failed to create a program that was going to be able to actually address the problem. It's one thing to allocate money. It's another thing to actually get it into people's hands. And another thing that I just thought was funny, which is just kind of tangential to the point I was just making, but the Supreme Court ended the eviction moratorium. This was in the official statements, right? So this is just like a hypothetical question that they're asking to try to cast doubt on the CDC's authority and be like, well, if you allow the CDC to do this and extend the eviction moratorium, then what else could they do? And they say, could the CDC, for example, mandate free grocery delivery to the homes of the sick and vulnerable, require manufacturers to provide free computers to enable people to work from home, order telecommunications companies to provide free high-speed internet service to facilitate remote work? Well, yeah, that would be great. That would be fucking fantastic. I would love if they would do that. I mean, they portray this hypothetical question that they have here as if it's like a bad thing, as if it would be a terrible thing for people to have computers and access to broadband internet and free groceries delivered to their house. That would be absolutely fantastic. And this is what we should be talking about right now. I mean, it's wild to me how nobody is talking anymore about other methods that can be used to suppress the pandemic, right? It's like all anybody is talking about right now is vaccinating people. Well, yes, obviously that's very important, but we also have lockdowns. We could do another lockdown if they were willing to pay people to stay home. We could do that. That's what many other countries around the world that have handled COVID significantly more successfully than we have, that's what they did. Okay, so why are we eliminating all these other potentials of how we actually can help people directly and solve the problem of the pandemic? Because as this is currently going to be unfolding, we have a massive spike in COVID cases. We have ICUs that are at capacity in many of these southern states, and now we have a situation where unless Congress rushes back and actually passes something to extend the eviction moratorium, we're going to have thousands and thousands, if not tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or even over 1 million people that are being thrown out onto the streets in the middle of a deadly pandemic, and nobody seems to give a shit about it.